Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Bello Associates, dedicated to the pursuit of partnership for more than 40 years, offering services in the development of buildings, infrastructure, environmental, and energy projects. Bello, powered by partnership. labellapc.com. And Excellus Blue Cross Blue Shield, working with members to find health coverage for every stage of life, helping to make care and coverage more accessible in more ways for more people across the Rochester community. Details online at excellusbcbs.com.
From WXXI News, this is Connections. I'm Julie Philipp, filling in for Evan Dawson. On this hour of Connections, we bring you our weekly news roundup with WXXI journalists. Our first connection was made in Monroe County, where County Executive Adam Bello delivered his State of the County address on Thursday. This was an opportunity for him to sum up the county's progress over the past year, touch on some of the challenges he faces, and outline his priorities for the upcoming year. WXXI's Deputy Editor Jeremy Moule will take us through all of that and offer his analysis. Our next connection happened in Albany, where state legislators are closing out this year's session. The Assembly wraps up today, and the Senate finished late last night. Both chambers yesterday approved a one-year moratorium on large data center projects. We'll be talking about that and more with Capitol Bureau reporter Samuel King. And our final connection got its start 250 years ago. It's the 250th birthday of the United States of America. But the nation's story, as we know, is still evolving. That's the idea behind a new festival that ties together music, history, and voice to explore the concept of freedom in America. We will have Christine Rodarsky, historian for Monroe County in Rochester, Eric Townell, artistic director for the Rochester Oratorio Society, and operatic soprano and music teacher, and I hope I'm saying this right, Exaya Ivy, coming in. That's all coming up. But without further ado, let me introduce our first guest. It is WXXI Deputy Editor Jeremy Moule. Thanks for joining me, Jeremy.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So you attended the county executive's State of the County address yesterday at the Seneca Park Zoo, and we'll probably get into why it was held at the zoo in a little bit. But why don't we start out with talking about some of the broader themes of his speech?
Sure. Like a lot of things, Adam Bello framed it around what he calls his pillars. That's public safety, public health, economic and workforce development, and infrastructure. Those are things he always kind of brings any of his initiatives, proposals, pretty much anything back to, sort of his focus areas. But throughout that, there was also a thread of cooperation and partnership, or collaboration and partnership, excuse me, that he kind of tied everything to those themes as well.
So bringing in the community to address all of his pillars.
Yeah, or working with other layers of government, or working with the towns and the state and all of that.
Mm-hmm. And we just our guest on the previous hour talked about how siloed Rochester, Monroe County has been for, it seems like, forever. And do you think this is sort of addressing that?
I think in a way it is. It's funny. I think every county executive for my career in Rochester has talked about things being siloed and how they're going to break down the silos. And they also talk a lot about the collaboration and cooperation and partnerships and all that. But yeah, I think that definitely is part of it.
So we're very cooperative in our own silos. I don't know. I feel the same. I've been doing this a long time, and silos has been a buzzword for a long time.
Sure it has.
So yesterday, did the county executive announce anything new or surprising to you?
He did announce something new. He said the county is going to implement a Vision Zero plan. Implement Vision Zero, I should say. Vision Zero is kind of a mindset around traffic planning, and the goal is to get down to zero traffic fatalities. And there's a lot of work that goes into that. We actually have a clip of the county executive talking about kind of just giving the thrust of what's going to happen there.
Let's listen.
It's a collaborative, data-driven approach to eliminate traffic fatalities, and it will improve pedestrian safety across the county. Vision Zero brings together all of our road safety initiatives that we're advancing. Our traffic safety team, our active transportation plan, Stop DWI, school bus safety, and more, while creating new goals and priorities to make Vision Zero a reality.
Okay, it's nice to have some context around the term Vision Zero.
Yes, and there was no way I was going to remember all of those details.
Right. So, do you know any more specifics about it other than all these folks are involved and the goal is to have zero fatalities?
Sure. That is kind of the starting point, but you can look to the city of Rochester to see how this works because they are in the middle of their own Vision Zero effort. And I don't think it's a reach to say that the city and county will be working together on Vision Zero.
Okay. Any other announcements?
Well, let's see. There were a couple, actually. And I apologize if you folks hear me shuffling paper. There's a lot that is contained in the state of the county.
Reporter's notebook.
Yeah, so I have to have everything in front of me. But there were a couple of workforce centers on MCC campuses that he talked about. Construction is either going to start or is nearing completion. One of them is the Rochester Works Center that's going to be at the downtown MCC campus. That one is I think that's the one that's supposed to start soon. And then there's also the Sidor Optics Advanced Technology Center on the Brighton MCC campus. They're going to put their optics stuff there, but all their other high-tech and trades programs are going in there as well. He also announced something that is going to make at least one group of people very happy. The state has committed to closing the funding gap for constructing the Children's Pavilion in Highland Park. For those who are not familiar with the Children's Pavilion, it was an original part of the park. It was Frederick Law Olmsted's design included it. It was sort of at the apex of the park. And it was a very popular attraction, but it eventually fell into disrepair, was deteriorating, and was torn down. And there's been a push, especially by the Highland Park Conservancy, to bring that back.
What is a Children's Pavilion?
It was a big pavilion, a couple of stories, and it was called the Children's Pavilion because Olmsted wanted to kind of, I want to say he wanted to provide something that was future looking. Like the children at the time, when they were living in an environment that wasn't the greatest, air quality wasn't great. We didn't have pollution controls like we do now in the city. And so I think it was partly trying to recognize that. I'm kind of fuzzy on the details.
Oh, okay.
It's been a while since
I don't mean to put you on that.
Oh no,
spot.
I wrote about this at one point and I actually knew the answer, but with time it's faded.
So what are they building then, though?
It'll be a pavilion. It'll be sort of an open air structure
for them to gather.
Yeah,
and,
gathering
and,
place.
And the fact that it's a children's, so they'll be doing children's activities and that sort of thing. Is that the intention, or?
What a great question. I don't have an answer for it.
Oh well, that's okay. So he was at the zoo.
He was at the zoo.
Why was he at the zoo?
He was at the zoo because they have been in the midst of renovations there, and they are about to start construction on a new tropics exhibit. He said yesterday that the final designs are nearing completion, and they expect to start construction on that in sometime this year. This is going to be the new big exhibit with the aquarium, which the county executive says is going to have sharks you can touch.
Sharks
you can touch.
Hammerhead sharks, like
I think it was.
we saw at the
coral
public market.
Coral shark, I think, comes to mind, or was part of the name of one of them.
Okay, but not great white sharks.
No,
or
I don't think
anything
they're going to have
gonna...
jaws in that aquarium.
It's funny how many county executives like to do things at the zoo, but there really was a purpose for having the speech at the zoo this time. So a new exhibit, it's going to be construction expected to begin this year. Opening next year?
Their target is, I think, 2029 for opening.
So it'll take a few years to do that. Okay. All right. We have a few minutes left to talk about anything else. This was a very broad, wide-ranging speech, as they usually are. What else caught your attention?
Well, let's see. Let me consult my little cheat sheet here. He did talk about some of the accomplishments from the past year as well. One of the things he highlighted it was the opening of the Regional Investigations Operations Center.
I have
REOC.
Regional Investigations Operations Center.
Yeah. This is why I have papers in front of me filled with all kinds of names and
It's hard to hold
acronyms.
it all inside. Yep.
He also highlighted something that the Veteran Service Agency had accomplished, and that was getting $10 million in benefits back for Monroe County veterans.
Do you have any details on that? Like what?
No, I think they're just doing what they do. They help people get benefits that they're entitled to. That's one of the things they do there.
Okay. So we talked, about, new initiatives, the progress, anything on challenges. We are living in somewhat challenging times.
He nodded to some of the challenges from the federal government, and then he sort of turned that to talking about what the county has done to mitigate some of those challenges. He talked about the changes in SNAP benefit eligibility and the work requirements and the effect on the emergency food system in the Rochester area. The county put up some money to help FoodLink buy food for some of the food pantries to help offset the stress some people might have if they lose SNAP benefits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm guessing this creates a lot more paperwork for county workers that manage the SNAP benefits.
It does.
It
does. These requirements are going to cost the county a few $1 million in staff time over the next few years.
To bring that up. Anything else you want to draw to our attention before we take a little break?
Oh, I don't know. It was, as you said, these speeches, the state of the county speeches, they're wide ranging. They touch on a lot of things. For everything I'm remembering, I'm probably not remembering two other things that came up. He stuck to his pillars. He talked about cooperation and partnerships. I can add, I reached out to the county this morning about the Children's Pavilion to find out if they had any sort of construction timeline. And they're working through that right now. They just found out either yesterday or the other day that they were getting the money.
Mm-hmm. And I imagine you'll have a lot of follow-up to all of these things. It's a lot to digest in 24 hours or less, actually.
It is.
I really appreciate you joining me today. This is Deputy Editor Jeremy Moule from the WXXI Newsroom. And this is Connections. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we will have Samuel King, Capitol Bureau reporter for the New York Public News Network. We'll be right back.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Bob Johnson Auto Group, believing an informed public makes for a stronger community. Proud supporter of Connections with Evan Dawson, focused on the news, issues, and trends that shape the lives of listeners in the Rochester and Finger Lakes regions. BobJohnsonAutoGroup.com.
This is Connections, and I'm Julie Philipp, sitting in for Evan Dawson. And now we are moving to Albany, where lawmakers are closing out this year's session. The Assembly is wrapping up today, and the Senate finished late last night. And both chambers yesterday approved a temporary moratorium on large data center projects. And we're going to talk about that and more with Samuel King, Capitol Bureau reporter for the New York Public News Network. And I believe we have him online now. Samuel?
Hi, Julie. Can you hear me?
I can. Hi. Welcome.
Oh,
Thank you
great,
for joining
great.
me.
Oh, thank you.
So let's talk about this temporary ban on data centers. And I don't know if you say data or data. I think we can say either one.
Yeah.
It would be the first of its kind in the country if approved. How did it come about?
Well, Julie, lawmakers say they're responding to concerns about constituents about data centers and their impact on the environment and utility rates. Now, the legislation does place a 1-year hold on new large data center projects. So not smaller ones, but the big size ones that we've heard about in various communities across the state. It also requires an environmental impact study on data center development in the state. And developers would also be required to fund projects that benefit local communities, like infrastructure projects, once this moratorium would be lifted. Now, Assemblymember Dee Dee Barrett, she's a Hudson Valley Democrat, and she chairs the Chamber's Energy Committee. She spoke about this bill on the floor yesterday.
This bill is both timely and common sense. Across the state, our constituents are talking about data centers. They are worried about data centers. They are confused about data centers, and they are looking for answers about data centers.
Julie, lawmakers say that this moratorium will really give them a chance to examine the impact of data centers across the state. This study actually would be 18 months in some versions of the legislation, so a little past the moratorium, but it gives them more time to really study the issue and the potential impact.
So kind of puts the brakes on before things can get too far along, right? Okay, but not everybody likes this idea. There is some opposition to this idea. For instance, the president of the Genesee County Economic Development Center has called it, quote, yet another effort by the New York State Legislature to thwart home rule and local decision making. What are you seeing in terms of the opposition? What don't people like about it?
Yeah, there was Genesee County specifically. There's a big project that's been proposed there, but there's been a lot of boisterous opposition. Opponents of that data center have been here in Albany in recent weeks, calling for this moratorium. And so several Republican lawmakers, including some Republican members from the greater Rochester area, spoke out against this moratorium yesterday. That includes Assemblymember Josh Jensen of Monroe County. He says a moratorium would hurt the state's economy.
And data centers are not some niche industry. They're the roads and bridges and railroads and power plants of our 21st century. They're going to be the infrastructure in which the modern economy runs. And when we place a moratorium on that infrastructure, even if for 12 months, we are sending a message to the rest of the country and the rest of the world, build that future someplace else.
Okay, so not everybody thinks that the brakes are a good idea, but across the country we're seeing this play out, right? So do you know where we stand? I believe if it's signed, we'd be the first in the nation. Are there others close, do you know?
Well, Maine passed, their legislature passed this as well, but the governor there vetoed the legislation. So they were the ones that are furthest along. A dozen other states, or more than a dozen other states, are also looking at this issue. And this is sort of one thing that, crosses regions and states and even political lines, just taking a look at how do you balance providing the infrastructure for the technology, like the Assemblymember Jensen was talking about, but really addressing the potential impacts on communities when it comes to the environment and it comes to power usage.
Right.
And some unions also were saying on the other side of this, Julie, saying that they wanted this, and that kind of delayed things a little bit here. And that's one reason there was a compromise. The original legislation was a 3-year moratorium. That has been pushed back to 1 year. And as the legislative leader said, that was a compromise to try to, as you know, try to make everyone happy and pass a bill before things wrap up.
Right. So there are a lot of pros, a lot of cons, but this strikes me as something that is probably one of our not in my backyard kind of ideas.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and it's like states like Virginia, where I am coming from, that's a big debate there because Northern Virginia is basically the data center capital of the world. Basically, there is miles and miles of data centers in Northern Virginia, and that's started to spread to other parts of the Commonwealth there. So definitely the need for the infrastructure, like the servers need to be somewhere, but the people don't necessarily want a data center in their backyard, like you said.
Right. So, okay, the late budget, it really tightened the timetable for lawmakers, but a number of priorities have made it through. Can you talk about those?
Well, one big one was lawmakers began the process of putting a constitutional amendment before voters on redistricting. New York's constitution currently bans mid-decade redistricting, but as we've seen across the country, Republican-led states have redrawn the maps, led by Texas at the urging of President Trump. So Democrats here in New York say it's only fair that we respond. So both chambers passed the amendments that has to pass again next year before they go to voters. And Congressman Joe Morelli from the Rochester region, of course, he is the national point person on this from Congress. And he says that it's important that New York acts.
We didn't start this fight, but we're going to finish it. And we'll do what we need to do. We continue to believe in independent redistricting, nonpartisan redistricting, but we're not going to do it. One state's not going to do it, and to the detriment of the people who live in the state.
So this would not take effect on time for the midterms, any kind of redistricting.
No, this would be for 2028. That's a good point. It's the primaries here in just a couple of weeks, basically. So it would definitely be too late for 2026. So this would be for the 2028 elections, but still with Congress so narrow and not really, both parties not really anticipating sort of a major push either way. This will still be relevant, of course, in 2028.
Okay. Any other priorities that made it through in the last minute?
Well, there were some things that the budget did take up a lot of time, but leaders were able to pass a number of other bills, like we mentioned the data center moratorium. We mentioned redistricting. They did manage to get a lot done in the budget, including money for other cities. So definitely some things that they were able to accomplish. But on the flip side of that, the long budget this year, it was longest since 2010, the latest budget. It really squeezed the amount of time that lawmakers say anyway. It really squeezed the amount of time they had to get things passed. But Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie spoke to reporters, talked to us to give his end of session assessment, and he told us that they were able to get some things passed despite that timetable.
I mean, I think when it's all said and done, we'll still pass a fair number of bills. I think we'll still pass over 800 bills. But yeah, the budget dominated a good part of the session. Our great staff, we're trying to, juggle members' bills versus the policy items that the governor put into the budget. So it did strain the legislature's ability to legislate.
Now, I did lose track. I think the budget was 7-8 weeks overdue.
8 weeks.
8 weeks.
Well,
8 weeks.
8 weeks. I'm looking at the calendar. So
where they were not
counting the weeks.
They were not doing other business. They were doing the budget. What was the holdup? Right. What took it so long? And how does that compare to previous recent years?
Well, they all the budgets under Governor Hochul have been late, so to speak, as opposed to Governor Cuomo, except for the COVID year budgets, really made an emphasis of having an on-time budget. But the governor has used the budget process in New York, as the governors in New York have the power to do, to advance some of their policy priorities. This year, that was some of the changes to auto insurance in regards to liability and fraud prevention and things that are aimed at reducing rates for people across the state. New York has some of the highest auto rates in the country, and also sort of the rollback of the climate law deadlines. That was also very controversial and also very complicated pieces of policy. We did notice as the budget dragged on, leaders started to have some bills advance in the legislature, either the Assembly or the Senate to move things along. But the governor, for her part, says that most voters don't care about late budgets; they care about the results. And she, of course, running for re-election, says she's delivering for New Yorkers.
Mm-hmm. And there's talk, that they hope that the process will be better next year. What would that look like?
Well, not, to quote the speaker, not having policy in the budget, as he is fond of saying here. It's almost, we kind of chuckle about it, but they feel, and to a lesser extent, the Senate Majority Leader feel that, having so much time, talking about policy in the budget and not actual numbers, takes away time that maybe these things should be legislated and not just part of massive budget package that takes up a lot of time in a session. So we'll see what actually comes of that. It's been a common lament for honestly decades here in Albany. You know, someone who grew up in the state, I remember hearing about these things in high school and everything about late budgets and battle. So we'll see whether that will change. But
I
again,
mean, is
in
that
New
a
York,
way
the
to
governor
kind
has
of
a lot of power.
push policy through because you have a deadline and you have to approve a spending plan?
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You tie it to something that has to pass, and you know it's hard to vote down a budget. And you know, in other states, we've seen government shutdowns. That really doesn't happen here in New York. Of course, as you know, they pass sort of extender bills, as they call it, to keep money flowing. So definitely, but we'll see if there'll be something different here next year.
So a very busy budget year meant that some things did not get addressed as the session wound to a close. What are some of those things that you had either expected or you know that were important to New Yorkers that didn't happen?
Well, one thing that it's not sort of the most it kind of can be a luxury for some people, but it's ticket prices. I guess it's become a luxury. And you want to see concerts or sporting events like the Bills maybe, and ticket prices have sort of skyrocketed, especially in the secondary market. Efforts to reform that have kind of stalled again, and this year it seemed like the speaker said they basically ran out of time to sort through some of the issues that would with the bills that would reduce fees. So they just extended the current regulations for another year. Something else that appears to have fallen by the wayside is the effort to a bill that's aimed at reducing plastic waste. That's been a perennial bill here. It came close again this year, but it seems like they ran out of time for that. Also, lawmakers didn't quite address the effect of budget cuts on hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers who were covered under what's known as the essential plan. Federal cuts forced them to lose coverage. There were many people, especially Democrats here, who are urging the governor and leaders to find a way to keep the coverage for those people, but that did not happen in the budget or outside of the budget. So most people are going to have to look on the marketplace when their coverage runs out here pretty soon. Okay.
And a couple of other things that I know that you covered, you and your colleagues in Albany. One, the Governor Hochul was calling to eliminate some environmental review for some development projects in order to speed up some housing projects, I believe. What happened with that?
Well, that was part of the budget. That was another thing. It wasn't sort of, there was some debate over that about what to apply it to, what sorts of projects that should apply to, and there were changes made to that along the way. That was controversial in some ways, but not as controversial as some of the other things, especially auto insurance and sort of the overall climate law rollback. So that was another part of the budget package, along with some of the immigration changes here in terms of cooperation with ICE and civil protections for people who feel that their civil rights were violated by ICE enforcement in New York.
So those things remain part of the budget that was passed?
Yes.
Okay. And then
again, it's a big document.
Yes.
The budget is a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. And
you
you touched on auto insurance. What's the final, what does that look like now?
Well, they've made some changes to the liability standards in terms of I spoke with Senator Jeremy Moule from the Rochester area. Of course, he's the Senate Transportation Committee chairman, and he mentioned, this is really for the punitive damages, collecting pain and suffering, trying to rein in those sorts of awards in court. And that's one thing that they did change some of those liability standards. Also, rate increases and making sure that the state is reviewing any rate increase. Right now, I guess they're technically supposed to review any rate increase, but so far, insurance companies in the past have been able to, if it's a 5% rate increase or less than that, they've been able to just kind of do it, and the state comes in later. But now any rate increase would have to be reviewed by the state. We mentioned sort of the fraud crackdowns as well, and all of this going to reduce rates. The question is, and a lot of people have this question, what most people want to know is when those rates go down. That's something that remains to be seen and could take a while. Won't likely be instant, according to many experts.
Okay. So, in large part, Governor Hochul got what she proposed in the budget regarding auto insurance.
Yes,
Yes. Okay.
for the most part, there was a couple of technical things that I would have to like read again, but it's she didn't get some of the liability changes she wanted, but she got most of
By and large.
what
Okay.
she wanted. And when it comes to some of the other bills, we mentioned the data center moratorium and things like that. Those are really now in the governor's court to sort of review or veto or suggest or request amendments
Right.
to those bills. So we'll see what happens with that.
Right. So that is the next step. Now everything sits on her desk, correct? Like what has to happen next, and how long does she have to do all of this? What can she do?
Well, she has until the end of the year, and sometimes these bills come out in batches, so she'll get a few bills. So far, I think we counted. There's been hundreds of bills so far that have passed both chambers and would go to the governor at some point. Again, she has until the end of the year to make a decision, again, whether to sign the law as is, veto the law, or suggest amendments. And then the legislature will come back in their next session and address those amendments that the governor had requested.
Okay. And I think one of your cuts in the beginning said there were 800 bills going before her to sign. Swinging back to the data center moratorium, what do you think she's going to do with that?
Well, she didn't commit either way this week. She typically, when asked about bills that are pending, she doesn't like to comment until she's had a chance to review them. But she did mention data centers in her State of the State address early this year, and her message has been the data centers need to pay their own way when it comes to energy. So that's one focus she has, and that's somewhat addressed in this moratorium bill. And also this week, she added sort of the impact or the need for the data centers to be a benefit for the community, and saying that the status quo when it comes to data centers in New York and can't continue. So we'll see whether she signs this bill as is, or as she has with some other legislation like medical aid and dying, request some amendments to be made that the legislature would then have to come back and consider. But we're just waiting and seeing on that. And again, she has technically until the end of the year to make a decision on that.
Okay. And what are you going to do with yourself now that the budget and the session is over? What's going on now?
Well, and as we mentioned this a couple of weeks, we have primaries. So we're still going to be, somewhat busy. And those hundreds of bills that we can possibly, between the three of us
No
here,
rest for the wicked, Samuel.
Jimmy
No rest.
Vielkind and John Campbell, cover all of them this session. So I will be looking at those as well.
Okay. Well, thank you, Samuel King, Capitol Bureau reporter for the New York Public News Network, for joining me this afternoon. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Take a little
too.
break
Thank
at
you.
least. All right. This is Connections, and in our final connection, we are going to talk about a new festival that ties together music, history, and voice to explore the concept of freedom in America. We're going to have Christine Radarski, historian for Monroe County and Rochester, Eric Townell, artistic director for the Rochester Oratorio Society, and operatic soprano and music teacher Exaya Ivy coming in just a few minutes. We're taking a break now. We'll be right back.
In today's media environment, you have a lot of power. You can make a direct impact on your community by powering this public radio station with your monthly sustaining membership. Right now, what matters the most is your participation. Please start or increase your monthly donation.
And this is Connections. I'm Julie Philipp, sitting in for Evan Dawson. And today, this afternoon, we are talking about a new festival in celebration of our country's 250th birthday. We are bringing in Christine Rudarski, who is historian for Rochester and Monroe County. We have Eric Townell. I always want to put a W in there and call you Townwell. I don't know why. Artistic director of the Rochester Oratorio Society. And we have Exaya. I've been saying Exaya. Her name is Exaya Ivy. My apologies. Operatic soprano and music teacher. Thank you all for joining me for this section of Connections to talk about this festival. The festival is being put on, sponsored by the Rochester Oratorio Society. So before we get into the festival itself, I'm wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about the society for listeners who are not familiar with it.
Sure. We would love to make some new friends for the Oratorio Society because we're celebrating our 80th anniversary season right now.
Not quite as old as the country, but you've been around.
But still a reason to celebrate. And so our first name is Rochester, so we try to sing out the best values of the best qualities of our community through the music that we perform. And we perform many concerts in a year. Some of them are large choral concerts with about 140 singers, and then we have a small group that sings for private events and civic celebrations and that sort of thing. And then we produce a lot of multicultural type of recitals and panel discussions and everything throughout the year so that we really celebrate Rochester and its culture and its history and find new friends everywhere we can.
Okay. And the festival, I presume, is an extension. You have a concert series called Arts Connecxions. So even before we get to the festival, talk some background on the
Sure.
series.
Arts Connections is a way for ROS to celebrate some of the more diverse elements of our community. Some creators, performers, artists of color who have created such a wonderful body of work in our own community, but whose work hasn't been celebrated in perhaps the way it should have and doesn't necessarily fit on our concert series with 140 of our best friends plus a symphony orchestra. And so they're smaller format recitals, but also ensemble music and multimedia. Sometimes it's spoken word, dance, and then projections or other visual elements and things that make the art form more familiar and brings it really to relevant life for everybody.
Engaging. Okay. So tell me why we have Christine and Exaya here today.
Well, because, these are all avenues in for people who aren't familiar with the Oratorio Society to become our new friends. Just to find their way into appreciating what we do and the artistic service we offer to the community for 8 decades. And that can be through our local history. Here we're celebrating 2 incredible statesmen who come from Rochester that, not many communities can boast of their presence. And then also, our continuing contribution to national music history through the Harlem Renaissance.
Okay, we'll get into the specifics of the festival in a little bit. I think people are going to get a little confused if we get too far ahead of ourselves. Sure. So the festival is called America at 250, The Journey to Freedom. It's going to take place over several days later this month. Before we get into the specifics of each day, talk about how the idea for the festival originated.
Well, Arts Connections is that celebration that we've had now for 3 or 4 years, and that was my concept to bring different elements of our history and our culture all together in a way that people would not have connected them in other ways. Some spoken word or background information informed by the music and by the creators of every background that make Rochester such a rich place to live.
Is this the first festival you've done?
No.
Okay.
We've had a mini festival for Arts Connections in the past.
Lots of mini festivals, but this one is centered around the birthday.
That's correct, and our local history and culture.
Okay, great. Okay. So again, it's called America at 250, The Journey to Freedom, and the press release talks about the evolving story of freedom in America. How did you land on that? This may be an obvious question. How did you land on that at this time as a backbone of the festival, the sense that American freedom is not a done deal or a finished product?
That's right. This celebrates the process of freedom. It's a journey to freedom. And so we looked at what other performing arts organizations are doing for this kind of celebration. And it's very typical celebratory fare. Perhaps it's service anthems or patriotic favorites or something more familiar to people. But then, thinking about our first name being Rochester, what makes it unique to us and what makes our people, celebrate their role in this history. And it's very closely connected, as it turns out, through the two individuals that we'll be discussing and through the cultural history that developed in this area or at least passed through Rochester on its way to big things in the Harlem Renaissance. Our venues here were important breeding ground and cultivating grounds for music history.
Okay, so let's bring in our other guests because you're sitting over here so quietly. We have Christine Rodarski, who is historian for Rochester and Monroe County, and Exea Ivy, an operatic soprano and music teacher. Thank you for being here. Could you each talk about your role in this festival? Why don't we start with you, Exea?
So I'm doing a vocal recital of Harlem Renaissance music. Kevin Nish will be accompanying me. I feel like, especially around this time of year, Juneteenth coming up, we're highlighting, the Black voice for a long time now. And I mean, obviously things have progressed, but, there's still a ways to go. There's been a lot of Black struggle, like Black racism and segregation. So the Harlem Renaissance really gave Black people, a voice to, tell their stories about their struggles and the inequalities that they've gone through in America. It's not just, this. I think about the poem, I Hear America, Walt Whitman. He kind of, portrayed this positive, version of America about, unity. Whereas, Langston Hughes, who's a major voice in the Harlem Renaissance, his I Too Sing America, which is one of the pieces I'll be singing, actually, which he collaborated with Black composer Margaret Bonds. It was sort of a response to Walt Whitman's poem, being like, hey, that's not the full picture here. There's a whole community, community being Black people that don't have that same reality because of the color of our skin.
Right. So
I felt like that was really important to, highlight, the Black experience and what we've been through and how and the progress we've made, but how, there's still a ways to go.
It's still evolving. How does it make you feel when you're singing these pieces?
I feel very empowered, as, a Black woman, because not only from a racial standpoint, but from also a gender standpoint, Black women, we've been the most marginalized. It's a double-edged sword. So I feel proud to, be able to, kind of be a voice, be one of the voices, sharing the stories of, the past, present, and then, future of where things could go.
Through music. Did you ever, when you wanted to become a singer, an operatic soprano, did you ever think about how this could have an impact? Like, was it the music or were you interested in being someone who looks at the struggle and the inspiring people with your music?
To be honest, when I was younger, I didn't have, the evolved, mindset of the history of how hard it, because Black opera singers, they didn't even come to the forefront until, around this time of the Harlem Renaissance, 1920s, 30s, and so on. So when I was younger and being a singer, it wasn't quite developed in my mind yet, but as I've gotten older and learned about, how hard it really took for Black women to have a voice in the entertainment world, it became that much more important. And, we've come a long ways. There's lots of great Black opera singers out there now, like, Janine DeBeek, Pretty Yenda, we have, Black faces in opera now, but, again.
Right. Good. Well, thank you very much. And now we're going to go to Christine Rodarski and talk about, you're the historian for Rochester and Monroe County. And 250 years and Rochester's role in it. I'm guessing that that's part of your role is to bring that in. So why don't you explain how you are involved in this festival?
Exactly. Of course, with this being the 250th anniversary of our country, I've been highly involved. And I'll just put a plug in. We're actually opening a major exhibit at the Central Library this evening. So 5 to 8 if anyone wants to stop by. But yes, as the local historian, I'm also a historian of reform movements. And so that's one of the things that makes me so excited about this partnership and my involvement in this. The United States is not perfect. It's never been perfect, right? But we have these ideals that our founders laid out for us. And especially here in Rochester, folks have been working to live up to those ideals over the years. And it is still in progress, but it is very much something that is community-based, locally based. And so my role in the festival is that I will be giving a talk with my colleague, Mary Jo Lanphier, who's the historian for the town of Brighton. And we will be talking about William Claude Bloss and Austin Stewart. And these are two of Rochester's earliest abolitionists. Everyone knows Frederick Douglass's name, but there were a lot of other folks working here in Rochester. And one of the things that I like about talking about these two individuals at the same time is we've got a black man in Austin Stewart and a white man in William Bloss. And it really helps to show in this divisive world we're living in right now, what can happen when you can build bridges between people of different races, different cultures, different age groups. So I think that's really important. And Rochester was so important in even the earliest abolitionist movement. We tend to talk about it more in the terms of Frederick Douglass, but he didn't come here until 1847. Austin Stewart was in Rochester by 1814. And, already starting to talk about these issues. Same thing with William Claude Bloss. New York State did not emancipate its enslaved people until 1827. Austin Stewart was enslaved at birth in Virginia. He was brought here with his enslaver and lived enslaved in New York State until he took his own freedom in 1814. And he educated himself. He tried to use the legal system. He advocated for his own freedom. And when he was able to take that freedom, he came to Rochester and he became a leader here, helping other people who had escaped slavery, who were looking to build a new life in Rochester. He operated a meat market and a grocery store. He opened a school for African-American children. And he also, something that I'm very interested in, when New York State finally did emancipate the last of the enslaved people, he gave the speech here in Rochester on July 5th. The day after Independence Day, celebrating that. So there's just so much we can talk about here, and I love to make these connections.
So I'm curious, why are these lesser-known names? These sound like really interesting, amazing people.
Why are they not as known? Well, I think Rochester so embraces its connection with Frederick Douglass, as it should. I think in some ways that has overshadowed some of these other people, though. There has been an effort more recently to recognize Austin Stewart. We've got the new Austin Stewart Plaza that the city named after him. So we're starting to make some inroads
to dig
here.
into the archives a little bit more. We have a few minutes left, so let's walk through each day of the festival. The first day is Wednesday, June 24th. What's happening?
Right, at the Brighton Public Library, 6:15 p.m., free of charge until 7:30. Christine Radarski and Mary Jo Lanphier will be speaking about these two pivotal figures in our history, and that is Austin Stewart and William Claude Bloss, and their role in forming really everything about abolition, but also temperance and also universal suffrage, these values that are very much alive in our community today. So that's the Wednesday.
Okay, and then and that's free. People can
free
just
of
show
charge.
up.
Brighton
Do they need
Public
to
Library.
register or anything? You just show up at the library.
Show up at the library.
Okay. And then we have Thursday, the next day, June 25th. What's happening that day?
That is a solo vocal recital by our artist Isaiah Ivy and Dr. Kevin Nitsch, performing music of the Harlem Renaissance and beyond. So that shows how Rochester had a pivotal role in helping promote and create the music and the tradition that became some of the most important in our history, music of the Harlem Renaissance. And then we get a large community chorus together. Really, these are all choristers starting
But this is not Thursday.
No, that's Thursday.
So you're going to take a break on Friday and Saturday, right? So the Thursday one, again, where is it? And
Thursday is at the Rochester Academy of Medicine. Time is 7:30, I believe.
And the Rochester Academy, that's on East
Avenue.
East
Right.
Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
And so the time is
7.
7.
And you can just show up.
Yes.
Again, and it's free.
Yes.
And it's a beautiful venue to hear a beautiful
Yes.
voice, I'm sure. So that's very nice. Okay, then Friday, Saturday, we take a break from the festival, and Sunday. No, we don't.
We're rehearsing.
Oh,
That's what I
okay.
was
You
doing.
guys
Yeah,
don't
that's
take a break.
No, right. We prepare because we have a little concert on Sunday. And we will be singing music of Randall Thompson called Testament of Freedom. That's Thomas Jefferson texts. We'll be singing We Are on Native Land by Brent Michael Davids. He's a Stockbridge-Muncie composer, internationally famous composer. He wrote the music that's in the Creation Myth video at Ganondagan. Many people will have seen that. Brent is a major figure, and we did a U.S. premiere of his piece called We Are on Native Land. And we will be reprising that during this festival. And the performance is Sunday, June 28th, and the time is I believe 3 p.m., but it's all on our website at Christ Clarion Church in Pittsford.
Okay.
So also
and this
free
is
of
a
charge.
large choir. This is a
Large
bigger
choir,
group.
yes.
How big are we talking?
About 50 voices. And it'll be mainly our small ensemble that performs community events, plus a lot of others who join us just for the experience of singing. And you can still join that choir. So we hope people will come out and sing.
Okay. Thank you very much. Again, our festival is called America at 250, The Journey to Freedom. It's happening Wednesday, June 24th, Thursday, June 25th, Sunday, June 28th. And again, where can people find information?
www.rossings.org.
All right. And I want to thank my guest, Christine Rodarski, historian for Rochester and Monroe County, Eric Townell, artistic director of the Rochester Oratorio Society, and Isaiah Ivy, operatic soprano and music teacher, for joining me today. I appreciate it. And thank you to our producers and our listeners. Have a wonderful weekend.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Eben Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.